Hello and welcome to another video. This is the third episode of the story in which Jiraiya and Tsunade are supposed to watch over Naruto, but instead Orochimaru takes care of him. How will this affect others as well as both of them? What will it mean for Konoha? This story was written by Brown Phantom. Kindly support him, her. Like and subscribe to help to support videos. Let's start this show. Morning came and the three Sannin were the first to wake up. This was rather early for Tsunade, but she didn't have a hangover this time. Orochimaru, who was used to getting up early to check on the kids right away, did just that while his teammates still had to rub the sleep out of their eyes. Oddly, before he got to any of their rooms to see if they were up yet, he ran into Hitomi, who looked like she was waiting for him. "Good morning, Sannin-sama. Would it be alright if I had a word with you before the children get up?" "Sure, and call me Orochimaru please." The pale Sannin told her as he led her to an empty room that he was planning on making a kitchen for the residents. "So what's on your mind, Hitomi-san?" The pale-eyed woman seemed hesitant to answer, but made no effort not to. "Orochimaru-sama, remember how Tsunade-sama said my problems were because of someone poisoning me and not related to childbirth complications?" He nodded. "I've been thinking it over and, even though it disgusts me, I think I know why someone would do that." Orochimaru could easily sense how troubling this was for her. "Would you like some tea or something? You look like you need something for your nerves." "That would be nice, thank you," she answered quietly. Fortunately the room had enough already in it to boil water, so Orochimaru was able to actually make the drink. He didn't say a word more until it was done and he handed her a steaming cup, keeping one for himself in case she didn't feel right drinking alone. After taking a long sip, Hitomi started telling what she knew and suspected. "It all started before Hanabi was born, to be honest. But I should probably start there. You see, when I had problems after she was born, I thought it was normal afterbirth complications, just more exhausting than what I went through with Hinata. But ever since Tsunade-sama told me someone had poisoned me, I've been thinking it over and I can only come to one conclusion. I've been wondering about that too, but go on." Hitomi sighed. "The way I see it, only someone from the Hyuga main branch would have had the opportunity. Even my own husband could be a suspect, although I don't want to believe that. As for motive, that requires me to tell you something rather unpleasant I discovered a week before Hanabi was born. Something that may have larger ramifications than I already suspect." She could tell the snake Sannin was still paying attention here, so she decided not to beat around the bush anymore. "One day that week, I was supposed to get a checkup to ensure my baby was doing well, and I had to wait for the doctor to show up. I got curious and used my Byakugan to see how far away they were so I'd know how long to wait, but my eyes saw something much more interesting. I saw numerous connected paper bombs inside the walls of the building and even the foundation. And the connections led to outside, so I checked the full scope of my visual limits and saw there was a whole network of paper bombs throughout the entire village." Orochimaru somehow paled. "Paper bombs throughout the village?" Hitomi nodded. "Yeah, I was immediately worried. Someone could destroy the entire place with just a kunai or something if they wanted to. I was going to alert someone, but before I did I thought of something. The vast majority of those bombs were built inside buildings, meaning they were put there when the village was being built or reconstructed, and that was a long time ago. There is no possible way I was the first Hyuga to actually catch a glimpse of this setup. Even if I didn't make it a point to use my Byakugan regularly off the compound, others would and someone would have had to spot something." Orochimaru frowned and nodded. "Meaning a genjutsu was involved that stopped working, or they're the ones who made this trap?" Hitomi nodded with him. "Or at least they know about it and plan to use it to their advantage somehow." "How do you envision them doing something like that?" "Well, I have heard talk from the Hyuga elders about how they feel the Hyuga should run the village." Hitomi started. Orochimaru scoffed. Sounds like a typical Uchiha attitude." "Oh, pardon. It's okay. Anyway, I always thought it was just banter. But now, I suspect they may someday try it, and if they fail, they'd trigger the network to take the whole village down with them. I brought this up with Hokage-sama and he admitted this was a serious issue and would get right on it. I kept silent about it and saw Umbu poking around the city, so I'm sure it's being handled. I think someone in the main branch must have caught onto what I discovered, because I went into labor earlier than expected and that would have been the perfect chance to get rid of me. Orochimaru nodded. Makes sense. If you had died they could have said it was from childbirth and not murder. And I'm willing they did something that triggered labor so they could get a second heiress. Before losing you. One thing I don't get is how they could have known you knew anything if you only spoke, too. His eyes widened at this new thought and he dropped his teacup. As it shattered on the floor, he stood up in outrage. That son of a bitch. What's wrong, Orochimaru-sama? Hitomi quickly asked, afraid she had upset him somehow. Hitomi-san, the way I see it, there's only one way for anyone from the Hyuga to know you found out anything. And that's for the one person you told to have told them. Orochimaru explained with a grim expression. Hitomi gasped. You mean Hokage-sama? Orochimaru nodded. How else? And even worse, that means he's onto the bomb trap as well. If he wasn't, he wouldn't say a word to the Hyuga and simply have Umbu remove them without anyone knowing. If he told anyone, it could only be because he was part of the setup. Maybe the whole thing was his idea and he's using some of the Hyuga clan to keep an eye on the network. And I'm willing to bet those Umbu you saw were just making sure the whole thing was still operable. Hitomi placed her tea down. Do you really think the Hokage would do such a thing? The Sannin slowly and sadly nodded. There are things about the man I don't want to believe either, but I've seen too much to deny it. And now I'm suspecting there are more secrets of his we could benefit from knowing. If only you could find evidence of them. Hitomi casually offered. Orochimaru smiled in his trademark manner, already coming up with an idea. Later that same day 3 toads were inside Sarutobi's office while the old Hokage was at a council meeting. One of them went in first and managed to hotwire the one security camera into playing a continuous loop of nothing happening. Since the Hokage Tower was one of the most secure places in Konoha with ninja, traps, and seals everywhere, cameras were little more than a peace-of-mind last resort that few paid much attention to. Once the toad was sure he succeeded in tricking the camera and anyone who may check the footage later, all 3 went to the Hokage safe. The safe was designed to contain anything that was for the Hokage's eyes only, and anything they left for their successor. It's a good thing the old man told Jiraiya the combination. A red toad mentioned as he turned the dial. Yeah, old man must have never suspected Jiraiya of wanting to take a close personal look at anything without breasts. A yellow toad added. He was partially right, because Sarutobi told Jiraiya the combination to the safe to ensure he could secure whatever was inside and add to it should he himself be someday unable to. The safe opened and there was no alert, since only the Hokage was likely to open it anyway. The 3 toads grabbed as much as they could, locked the door, and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Back in Oto, the 3 Sannin patiently waited while Hitomi was watching over the children elsewhere in the tower. When the 3 toads returned to them, they were both eager and apprehensive about what they may find. Either way, they wanted to get through it all quickly so they can put everything back and never be caught. Unlikely, yes, but not impossible for the Sannin. Besides, all they were really looking for was anything that might pose a threat to Naruto later. The first thing to catch their eyes was a set of documents in a folder with IWA written on it. Considering the relations Konoha had with the Rock Village, they couldn't help but wonder what was inside. What they found was the last thing they'd ever expect to see. The official story about IWA was that during the last war Minato used his Hiraishin and Rasengan, among other impressive jutsus, to decimate a large number of rock nin to save Konoha and thus earned Iwa's animosity for generations to come. If Iwa ever knew he had a living relative, especially a defenseless one like Naruto, they'd do absolutely anything to kill them come hell or high water. Sarutobi had made sure each one of the Sannin knew this, even before the boy was born. Apparently that had been another lie to the Sannin. According to the documents in the file, Iwa was actually grateful to the Yondaime rather than spiteful. The shinobi he killed were about to try their own complete and total takeover of Iwa, and Minato happened to be in the right place at the right time to get rid of them all. The end result was the Namikaze's name being praised in Iwa and them wanting to be allies with the Yondaime and his family. If anything, they'd give Naruto their own forbidden scroll before trying to kill him. Sensei lied to us about Iwa? Tsunade managed to make herself ask. Why the hell would he do that? I don't know, but I plan on going to visit the Tsuchikage and confirming this detail right away. Jiraiya told them. If it's true, then we'll have a good ally for this village. Orochimaru nodded. Agreed. What was that old fool thinking by misleading us that way? What was he afraid of? Look at this one. Tsunade said as she held up another folder labeled Tsuna. This one has messages from the current Hokage to the current Kazekage in regards to their Jinchuriki. Tsuna has a Jinchuriki? Orochimaru asked. Jiraiya nodded. Yep, the Ichibi from what I've gathered. And he's about Naruto's age if I remember correctly. Well, get this. Tsunade started as she held out one of the papers she'd been looking over. Sarutobi-sensei said to the Kazekage, and I quote, "So you've got the Ichibi contained? Big deal. I've got the Kyuubi under my control, and when he's older he'll do whatever I tell him because he'll see me as one of the few worth listening to here. You'd have to put your son through several kinds of physical and emotional hell before you pose any kind of threat to my village's grandeur." End quote. Orochimaru wanted to puke. So it's not enough he tried to sabotage Naruto's chances for a good future, but he had to try and do the same for a kid in another village? Tsunade pulled out another page rather than answer. And it says here from the Kazekage that he's calling the old man's bluff and trying to make his Jinchuriki, his own son nonetheless, into a perfect killing machine. If you don't mind, I'd like to go there and see what I can do about it. What do you hope to accomplish? Orochimaru asked. Well, I'd like to see just what the Kazekage is doing to his son and if possible persuade him to stop. There's no reason for him to be so malicious just because Sarutobi-sensei egged him on. The medic Nin explained, then swallowed hard. Also, if possible, I'd like to bring Naruto along, since I'm sure he can relate to the poor boy better than anyone else could. Take Naruto with you? Orochimaru asked in disbelief. The sad thing was that he understood her reasoning. If the Tsuna Jinchuriki was suffering, then Naruto would be the perfect person to lift his spirits and maybe undo any damage. But at the same time, the idea of Naruto going somewhere without him wasn't a good one to him considering the past 3 years. I think that might be a good idea, Orochimaru. Jiraiya added. The only reason they were really seeking his approval wasn't because he was the chosen ruler of the city, but because they were aware he had more say over Naruto's well-being than they did, irregardless of their godparent status they never used. Alright, but his guardian Sango is going with him. I'm sure Anko-chan will. Want to as well though, so how do you feel about that? The Snake Sannin asked. Personally, I'd rather not. I'm good enough to protect him on my own and she'd just get in the way. The Slug Sannin answered. Orochimaru chuckled. Try telling her that, I dare you. With the help of some clones the documents were quickly copied and the Toads were very fortunate to get the forgeries inside the vault before Sarutobi returned to his office. The authentic ones would stay in Oto should they be needed later, and no one in Konoha would be the wiser unless Sarutobi took a good look at his own secret collection. The next day Jiraiya told everyone in the tower he needed to check out something in a village up north. Tsunade said she had to do the same in a village down south. Everyone wished them luck, but once she mentioned she'd be bringing Naruto with her, Anko and Hinata acted up. Hinata just cried because she regarded the boy as her best friend and Anko didn't really trust Naruto to be with any adults besides Orochimaru too much. In the end, when Tsunade did leave Oto, she brought along 2 kids and a snake, hoping she wouldn't come back with less. For anyone that's curious, all 9 Kekkai Genkai have already been selected. Only 8 girls have been confirmed now, so there's still 1 position available. At this time, Temari is the most likely candidate. After a week of traveling, Tsunade had reached Suna, bringing Naruto and Anko with her. Along with their 2 guardian snakes which were currently small enough to hide in their pockets and were doing just that. Part of it was to get out of the heat of the desert, and the other part was to make their trio a little less threatening. Not that an old woman with 2 kids looked threatening already, but they weren't natives in a hostile land and there was no reason for them to stand out so much. Standing at the gates into the desert city were 2 armed guards, postured to be on alert rather than sitting in a booth like Konoha guards. They did have a tarp over them to provide some shade, but that was the only similarity. Halt! Tsunade stopped and stood confidently but with no hint of hostility. My name is Tsunade Senju and I'd like to discuss business with the Kazekage regarding Konoha. The guards recognized her name, as did many active shinobi in the elemental nations. We haven't been informed of any visitors. I'm not here on any official business. More of a, I've got something he'll want to hear sort of visit. Tsunade told them. The 2 guards huddled and whispered. Should we let her in? What would Kazekage-sama do? She may be a sannin but we have home field advantage and the numbers advantage if she tries anything. Besides, if she was going to do something wouldn't she have brought something more helpful than 2 kids? The 2 guards thought it over a bit more silently before returning their attention to their visitor. One of us will escort your party to the Kage Tower. Do not try anything foolish. Tsunade nodded. Lead the way. And please tell me you've got a casino here. What's a desert without casinos? And some ice cream too? It is too freaking hot. Anko added, wiping sweat off her forehead. I don't think you'll be disappointed. One guard answered, trying to sound friendly. Everyone was quickly led to the Kazekage's tower, but only Tsunade went inside. There was a park within sight of the tower with some kids playing and a shaved ice kiosk nearby, so she told them to go play while she had a meeting they would be bored attending. Anko bought some shaved ice for the both of them with some money Tsunade gave them, then the 2 stood in the shade of a building watching some kids kick a ball around. Anko quickly noticed one of the kids was sitting on a swing instead. Not using it, just sitting there and watching the others poly with a forlorn look. Wondering what was wrong, she grabbed Naruto's wrist and walked over to check on the boy. A closer look showed this boy was about Naruto's age, maybe year older at most. He had red messy hair and dark rings around his brown eyes, like a raccoon. His clothes looked like earth-toned rags and his skin wasn't really tanned but a healthy color for one outside a lot. His face however showed a lot of fear and unhappiness once he looked at the approaching new kids. Poor boy. He must be an orphan. Anko thought sadly. But she then showed a friendly grin and sat on the swing next to him. Hi. I'm Naruto, and this is my Nachan Anko. Who are you? The redhead blinked in surprise several times before answering. Ga. Gara Sabaku. Nice to meet you, Gara. Nachan, gimme a push. Naruto said while trying to get his own swing to start moving. Anko got up and pushed Naruto, stopping once he got enough momentum. Want one too, Gara? Gara looked at Naruto and Anko before nodding. She gave him a few gentle pushes and soon he was rocking back and forth like a pendulum. It looked a lot To her like he was almost afraid to enjoy himself, since he wasn't really smiling. The ends of his lips did curl up, but it looked like he was trying to mask any pleasure for some reason. "Hey, get away from there!" some boys called out. Anko turned to see all the kids who had been playing were now watching her and Naruto with Gaara, and what surprised her more was that they looked like they had seen a ghost. "Something wrong? You're actually playing with him?" one of the girls asked, as if the very idea was frighteningly unthinkable. "Yeah, so what's got you all so worked up?" Anko asked. Naruto carefully watched while Gaara looked like he wanted to vanish. "You shouldn't go near him. He's a monster," another girl told them. Anko frowned, remembering all the times she heard people in Konoha say such things about Naruto and her. "Better watch what you say," she warned, balling her fists, while her guardian snake Kogayaku popped her head out to see if anything was wrong. "I have no patience for people who talk like that. But everyone says he's a killing beast," a boy declared, sounded more concerned than hostile. Anko smirked. "People say the same about my Otuto all the time. So why would being near Gaara bother me?" Kogayaku ducked back into the pocket, feeling Anko could handle this herself for now at least. A few kids frowned and gave Naruto dirty looks too. "Fine. If you wanna die, be our guest." With that, they all went back to their game and pretended this talk never happened. Anko sat down on her swing but didn't move, just looked at the two young boys next to her. "Everything okay? You did great, Nachan," Naruto enthusiastically claimed. Why did you stick up for me?" Gaara asked. "People back in our first home said the same things about Naruto and I didn't like it. No way I was gonna let them trash-talk another like that." Gaara looked shocked, but lightly smiled again. "Thanks," he said very quietly. For once the sand around him and the voice in his head weren't agitated. "Why do they call you a monster too?" Naruto asked. Gaara looked down. "I don't know. Back home everyone did that to me too. It gets rough, I know. But at least your family is there to make it all better, right?" Gaara slowly shook his head. "Nope. My father and siblings barely even talk to me. Yoshimaruji-san does, but only at night when I can't sleep." Anko gasped and got off her swing. "You poor boy." She held him in a hug and immediately felt his body tensen and some sand start to rise around her feet. Afraid she scared him, she let go. "It's okay, I wasn't going to hurt you." "What was that?" Gaara asked. "It's a hug. It's a sign of friendship," Naruto told the redhead. "Friendship?" Gaara repeated, as if testing the word. Naruto nodded. "Yeah. We'll be your friends. We've been called monsters too, so why not?" Gaara smiled. "What's this weird feeling I have? It's like I feel safe. Even more than with my sand." Naruto got off the swing and noticed the kids left their ball behind. "Come on, let's play a little." He kicked it to Anko, who kicked it to Gaara. His foot caught the ball, and he carefully kicked it towards Naruto, who had to run to catch it. In no time at all a three-man game of soccer was going on, with three smiling kids. Tsunade was led into the office of the Yondaime Kazekage, and told to take a seat on a mat in the center of the room. Once inside she noticed the overall look was similar to the Hokage's office last time she saw it, but this one had several seals on the walls. She didn't recognize any, but she couldn't see any that looked potentially dangerous to her. Still, her guard wasn't coming down if this Kage made a move. "So, one of the legendary Sannin wishes to discuss something with me?" "Well, I'm curious if nothing else." The Kazekage started. "Kazekage-sama, before I bring up the topic I wish to discuss, I would like to know how you view your relation with Konoha." Tsunade started. Since the Kazekage wore a cloak over his face, much like Kakashi did with his own mask, it was difficult to read any expression he had. Well, we've got a peace treaty between us, but I'm still wary of anything hostile that might ensue if it's a trick to lower our guards. Do you have reason to believe Konoha or any of its leaders have ill intentions towards you? Kazekage paused, trying to think of the best way to answer that. How is that any of your concern? You're not affiliated with my village, and from what I've heard you personally haven't been inside your own in years. So why would you care about how the two villages interact? Shrewd man. Like any good Kage, he knows not to give away too much info before getting more than he can offer. Question is, how to get him to open up with revealing too much on my own end? Tsunade thought silently. After a moment, she spoke up again. To be frank, Kazekage-sama, I don't. You're right, I'm not connected to Suna, and my bond with Konoha is strained to non-existent. However, I've come across something that leads me to believe you and the Sandaime Hokage are at each other's throats, and the reason is inconsequential. Kazekage looked surprised to hear such a thing. Inconsequential? Tsunade narrowed her eyes, but in a non-threatening way. Kazekage-sama, I know you have a Jinchuriki within this village, and the Hokage has told you how inferior he will be compared to the one Konoha has. How would you feel if I told you that was a bluff? A bluff? As in Konoha doesn't have a Jinchuriki. Kazekage sat there looking at her and occasionally glancing at the seals in the walls. These seals were basically lie detectors and constantly read the heart rate and chakra flow of anyone in the room, sans the Kazekage himself. If they detected any dishonesty, they would release several tranquilizer-coated senbon and some knockout gases the Kazekage had developed some tolerance to. They weren't designed to kill, since the interrogators wouldn't get the truth from a corpse. Since not a single one of them was reacting, he could only conclude the slug San-nin was being honest. The Kazekage took a moment to let this sink in. So Konoha does not possess a Jinchuriki? Tsunade nodded, and he sighed. That's a relief. I know several villages have one or two, but so far Konoha has been the only one to actually use it in a threatening way against us. If they can't flaunt one, then I don't have to be as harsh to my own. I don't recommend going easy on him, or any of your shinobi, but I don't believe you should be inhumane to him either. After all, Jinchurikis are only the prison, not the prisoner, and there's not a single one that chose that fate. Tsunade stated. Kazekage stood up slowly, clasped his hands behind his back and turned so his left side faced the window, letting him look outside but still able to keep an eye inside his office if need be. To tell the truth, I already knew that, but because of Konoha's threat, I tried convincing myself that the best thing for us all was to do the opposite. I didn't like seeing my own son be so alone and keep my other two children away from him. His uncle, my brother-in-law, helps him from time to time more than me, but I sense he has at least some hostility towards the boy. I was sure all that animosity was good for us all, even if bad for Gaara, and maybe years from now, I would have stopped caring completely if this meeting never happened. So what do you plan to do now? Tsunade asked. Kazekage sighed. I'm not sure. With the main threat gone, maybe I should try to be a father more than a Kage for a bit. And definitely get his siblings to be around him more. Maybe he won't become the perfect weapon, but at least he won't become a bigger threat to us than anything Konoha could use. Tsunade nodded, looking pleased. Also, I've heard one of your teammates is a seal expert, am I right? She nodded again. Would it be too much trouble for him to come by and have a look at Gaara's seal? Sometimes the demon in him gives him trouble, making me question its strength. I can arrange that. Which demon is it, by the way? The Ichibi, weakest of the Bijou. A big reason why the Hokage's threat unnerved me so much and why I was so eager to be as brutal as possible in his training. But why are you telling me all this? I didn't like the idea of you destroying your own son's well-being just because some old man wanted to sound big. And the old man himself is in hot water with me and my teammates, so all the more reason. Tsunade explained. I won't ask for more. Also, am I correct in assuming it would be best if I didn't let a word of this meeting out to Konoha? Kazekage asked. Yes. That would be best. Very well. Later that night Tsunade and the Toe kids checked into a hotel so they wouldn't have to wander the desert at night. At the Kazekage's house he surprised all three of his kids by calling them into the living room together. Temari and Kankuro were surprised Gaara was included, since he was always left out of these sorts of things. When they got there he was sitting comfortably on a cushioned chair, so Temari and Kankuro stood in front like a pair of trained soldiers. Gaara tried to imitate them but lacked the resolve to be as stable. Kids, I've decided to try something new from now on that may benefit you all. He started. From now on, I'm going to be more involved in your training and your lives outside training too, like I probably should have done from the beginning. All three kids looked more surprised than one might expect of them. What do you mean, Oda-sama? Temari asked. I mean I'm going to try and be more of a parent from now on and not just a commander. Kazekage answered. Why? Not that I mind, but why the sudden change of heart? Kankuro asked. Kazekage smiled, and since he wasn't masking his face everyone could see it. Because now I'm not afraid not to. He then glanced over at Gaara. You okay, son? The redhead nodded. Yes, Oda-sama. I'm well, better than ever thanks to my new friends. You made friends? Kazekage asked as Temari and Kankuro gave him curious glances. Gaara nodded. Yes. Their names are Naruto and Anko. They told me they'd visit as much as possible since they don't live here. And write once I know how to write and read. Interesting. I think I'd like to see them too. Temari added, thinking they had to be quite brave and or kind to want to associate with Gaara. Kazekage smiled, feeling quite paternal, something he hadn't felt in years. That's good, son. Very good. A knock at Tsunade's door the next morning woke her up and she was not happy about it. Grumbling while rubbing her eyes, she opened the door. What do you want at this ungodly hour? Language please, there are children present. And for the record, 9 in the morning hardly qualifies as such. Some soft voice Tsunade assumed belonged to a man replied. When Tsunade finally looked at her visitors, she first saw a feminine-looking man with pale hair and a gentle expression. With him were 3 kids, a blonde girl which looked to be the oldest, a brown-haired boy, and a red-haired boy which looked to be the youngest. Hi. What brings you here? My name is Yoshimaru, and with me are Kazekage-sama's children. Apparently one of them made friends with some children in your care and wished to spend time with them before you left our village. And the other 2 were curious about the first kids brave enough to socialize with them. I woke up early because some kids wanted a play date. Tsunade irritably thought. I'm sorry if this inconveniences you, but Kazekage-sama thinks this is a good thing for them all. Are you in any particular hurry to leave? Yoshimaru added. Tsunade shook her head. No, I need some time to compose myself. I'm not a morning person and haven't been an active shinobi in years, so I can't be in a rush just yet. Yoshimaru smiled. Well, in the meantime, please watch after these 3 and return them to the Kage Tower when it's time for either you or them to go home. Before the Sannin could interject, he had already left the hallway. Well, since I don't have much of a choice now, come on in and keep quiet. Tsunade gestured while yawning. When the 3 new kids were in, she noticed Anko and Naruto were already awake and playing tic-tac-toe at a table. How long have you 2 been up? About 20 minutes. Anko answered. Hi Gaara. Naruto waved happily. So these are the only 2 kids brave enough to be around Gaara? Temari thought as she looked over the purple-haired girl and the blonde boy. Boy's cute and I bet he'll be handsome when older. Girl looks like the type I can enjoy being around. Hi. I'm Temari Sabaku. And this is the brother you don't know, Kankuro. And just to warn you, he's a bigger pain than Gaara is sometimes. I am not. Yes you are. Gaara doesn't go through my makeup kit. It's war paint. Glad I don't use the stuff then so he can't steal it. Enko stated, not believing the cloaked boy's cry. After all, it did look a lot like makeup to her. Not you too. Doesn't anybody believe me? Kankuro whined. Hey Otuto, what do you think? Makeup or war paint? Enko asked Naruto. The young boy took one brief look before answering. Makeup? Everyone but Kankuro laughed. Well, Tsunade and Gaara just grinned instead. So what brings you three here today? Tsunade asked politely. Temari being the oldest chose to answer that. Our father thought it would be a good idea, and so did we. Gaara here has never been able to make friends before yesterday and we wanted to get to know the first people willing to do that. Tsunade looked at the raccoon-eyed boy. So he's this village's Jinchuriki? No wonder him making friends is a big deal to them. Bet he can get along with Naruto, even without either of them knowing the truth. Okay then, now that you've met, what next? We usually spend our mornings training in a private area. Wanna come along? Kankuro asked. Sure. Naruto said. He didn't know any jutsu, but was starting to work on snake-style taijutsu, which Enko had several years' experience at by now. Gaara looked down at his feet, until his sister tapped his shoulder. You can come too, Gaara. Just don't go overboard. The boy looked shocked, and to a point relieved. During one of the Kazekage's breaks, he looked out his window over the training ground his children were using to practice. Along with them was the slug Sannin and two children he didn't recognize, but assumed were the friends Gaara mentioned. Tsunade was watching over as the 5 kids worked on taijutsu. Actually, Gaara was just making punching motions while standing still rather than real practice. Kazekage-sama, why exactly have you called us here? One of the gathered jounin in the room asked. Many of them, including Yoshimaru, but not all of them since all couldn't fit, had been ordered to appear here for an announcement. I've called you here to give you a very important order. Kazekage started, not facing any of them. Remember how I was toying with the idea of ordering assassinations on Gaara to either strengthen him or eliminate him? Well, I've changed my mind. It was a foolish whim I wish I never had and I don't want to see anyone actually try to go through with it. You can't be serious. One jounin shouted in disbelief. Kazekage turned slyly to face the group now. And why is that? He's a monster. We need to get rid of him before he can destroy us. The same jounin answered. Wouldn't trying to kill him repetitively make him want to destroy us? Kazekage asked. What if we gave him reason to want to help us instead of hurt us? You actually want to cater to the Ichibi? A different jounin asked. No, I want to cater to my son, the boy who keeps the Ichibi locked up. Yoshimaru looked surprised. In all my years I don't think I've ever once heard Kazekage-sama refer to Gaara as his son. Something's happened recently. But Kazekage-sama, wasn't sealing the demon inside a child so it can be killed the whole point? A female jounin asked. If it was, then why would Gaara still be alive today? For that matter, wouldn't I choose some orphan likely to die and not be missed over my own child? No, the whole point was to ensure the Ichibi didn't escape its previous prison and could be used for the good of the village. And all it took was my sister dying. Yoshimaru bitterly thought but didn't show any resentment. Kazekage continued before anyone could interject. We all almost forgot that, or maybe to some of us, completely forgot that. Well, yesterday I got a reminder, and I say Gaara is to be shown the same respect and training you'd give my other children. I see anyone doing otherwise without just reason and you will be demoted or fired. Am I understood? Some nodded, but some didn't, one of which being Yoshimaru. Is there something wrong? Kazekage-sama, this is a lot to take in now, and I'm not sure I can act like all my hostility never happened. A blonde jounin answered carefully. As long as you don't act on that hostility, that doesn't really matter. Is that too much to ask of you? Kazekage replied. The blonde jounin closed his eyes. No sir. Any other objections? Kazekage asked. There were none. Good. Return to your assignments and let the others know. They all left and he sat in his chair. That went well, I'd say. I hope it stays that way. Night came and Tsunade chose to stay one more night for the kid's sake. But they were leaving tomorrow as soon as possible back to Oto. Anko and Naruto said goodbye to the Sabaku siblings in case they didn't get to see them tomorrow morning before they left, promising to keep in touch. Around midnight that night, with a large full moon high in the starry sky, Tsunade had to get up to use the restroom. Her moving around managed to wake Naruto up too, but not Anko. Something wrong, Bachan? The sleepy 3-year-old asked, slurring his words. Nothing, dear, go back to sleep. She kindly told him before heading off to do her business. When she finished and came back, she noticed Naruto was out of bed and looking out the window wide awake. What are you doing, Naruto-chan? Bachan, just saw a shadowy ninja man run by carrying a kid. Naruto answered fearfully, as if he had just seen the boogeyman. I think he had red hair. Red hair? Gaara-chan? Tsunade thought, quickly getting worried. I guess Suna's full of people who aren't afraid to kill a child either if they think about the demon more. I came here to help this village's Jinchuriki, so I gotta check this out. She then picked up her godson. Naruto-chan, can you show me which way they went? Gaara was frightened. He had been keeping himself occupied by playing with a teddy bear since he couldn't sleep when his kindly uncle Yoshimaru came to him and offered him a drink. Next thing he knew, he couldn't move but was still awake, and Yoshimaru was joined with a new Suna jounin Gaara had never seen before. This one was a man with red eyes and a thin graying beard but no mustache. They both took him out of his room and carried him to the outer edge of Suna, on top of the roof of a weapons storage building. The fact that Yoshimaru, a non-acknowledged threat, was carrying Gaara was the one and only reason the sand hadn't slaughtered them already. Luckily the Ichibi's chakra had been able to filter out the paralysis drug by now so he could speak and move. Yoshimaru-ji-san, what are you doing? Sorry Gaara, but you were never meant to live. The boy's primary caretaker told him, sounding woeful but not truly repentant. Why are you apologizing to him? He doesn't deserve it. The other jounin criticized. Take it easy, Kigo-san. Yoshimaru said peacefully as the sand around Gaara got agitated. Again Gaara, sorry, but in the best interest of Suna, you have to die. Why? Gaara asked as he crawled backwards, crying. Why, Yoshimaru-ji-san? What did I do to deserve this? And why are you trying to kill me? Don't you care about me? He briefly recalled a previous discussion he had with his uncle regarding pain, both physical and emotional, and his mother, where his uncle showed familial care for the redhead. The first time he remembered experiencing such a thing. You're an idiot if you think anyone can care about you. No one loves a demon. The jounin called Kigo claimed as he pulled out a dagger, ready to strike while the boy was too afraid to use his sand. Too bad he wasn't aware the sand could be commanded by Shikaku too, for he might have lived a little longer. Instead, the sand impaled him like a dango stick. Gaara looked at the sight briefly before looking to his uncle, really hoping the same thing didn't happen to him. Please Yoshimaru-ji-san, not you too. Why? The sand skewer dissolved to stay close to him and Kigo's body slumped on the stone roof they were on. You better have a damn good reason for this. A woman's voice sternly stated from out of nowhere. Yoshimaru and Gaara then saw Tsunade and Naruto step out of the shadows, not looking happy. Tsunade looked pissed while Naruto looked surprised by the whole thing. "And this morning I thought you were a decent person. Was that all an act? You don't understand the whole situation, Sanin-sama." "I understand enough." Tsunade almost screamed, then calmed down. "Naruto-chan, go check on Gaara-chan." She let him down and stepped between the boys and Yoshimaru. "I already know that child contains the Ichibi, also called Shikaka here, but he's not the same entity. Even so, he's a constant reminder of the pain Shikaku has brought us. Can you blame us for wanting to rid ourselves of such a thing?" Tsunade's scowl deepened. "Yes, I can. If you can look me right in the eyes and tell me the first thing you see when you look at that poor child is anything but a poor child, then you are the monster. But he's not as innocent as you'd like him to appear. He's killed before and will keep doing so." The Suna Jounin countered. The slug Sannin didn't look fazed. "If you mean just now, I saw it and know it was self-defense. Your partner made the first move and I'm willing to testify to the Kazekage about it. That's not what I meant. He killed his own mother, my sister, and if he's willing to do that, who's safe?" Yoshimaru added, sounding afraid and vengeful at the same time. Tsunade took a step closer. "And how exactly does that bother you?" "What? Are you bothered by Gaara as a professional ninja who's thinking about possible bad events, or are you bothered as a brother who's bitter about losing a family member and taking it out on the one person connected to the event? Is this resentment on a professional or personal level for you?" Yoshimaru scowled. "Not that it's any of your business, but it's both." "Then I'm reporting you to the Kazekage. He told me his new orders regarding the treatment of Gaara-chan. Since you're a threat to him, I must report you," Tsunade proclaimed. "Until then." She quickly did an induced sleep jutsu meant to calm panicky patients, but it did its job here and put the effeminate man to sleep. She turned around to look at the two boys. "You two okay?" Naruto nodded, but Gaara didn't. "I'll never be loved, will I?" Tsunade hugged him. "You will be, I promise. Someday others will tell you how much they care about you." She then shed a single tear. "But can he last until then? Sorry to bother you so late at night, Kazekage-sama," Tsunade told the leader of Suna as some of the village's Umbu took Yoshimaru and his partner into custody. She was inside the Kazekage's office with Naruto sleeping on her leg and Gaara wide awake in her lap with her arms around him in a gentle embrace. She wondered if the poor boy would have been able to sleep right then if he had been able to. "No need. I'm glad you were able to help him out. If you hadn't, he might have been killed or emotionally scarred for life at hearing my brother-in-law denounce him like that," Kazekage replied after a sip of coffee to stay awake for this. "But because of this little incident, I'm afraid I have a request of you, Sanin-san." "What kind of request?" Kazekage sighed. "Even though I've declared Gaara is to be treated humanely, it's evident that not everyone will go along with it. I fear that in order for my son to become rational and stable, he may need to spend some time away from here. Reminds me of what Orochimaru told me regarding Naruto." Tsunade quickly thought. "And you want me to care for him?" "With all due respect, Kazekage-sama, my teammates and I already have several children to watch over in our new home. I'm not asking for anything long-term. Just 6 months, a year tops. Long enough for him to accept kind human contact and long enough for this village to let go of their opinions towards him. I hope. And besides, since your teammate needs to look over his seal, wouldn't it be more convenient to bring Gaara to him so he can monitor the after effects?" Tsunade wasn't in the mood to argue. "All right then. You have a good point. Also, I'd like you to take my other 2 children along too," Kazekage added. At seeing Tsunade's alarmed expression, he continued. Part of it is for Gaara's sake and their own. They've spent so little time together even though they're siblings. In a non-hostile environment they can lose their fear of each other and start their bonds properly. Also, I must admit the notion of having all three of my kids receive care and guidance from the legendary Sannin is an added bonus. Well, when you already have 8 kids to watch over, what's 3 more for a short time? Tsunade thought wearily. I'll try, but if my teammates don't agree I'll have to bring them back. Besides, are you so sure it's wise to let someone you don't even know look after your children? Kazekage sighed. It's sad, but for the brief time you have been here you and your group has already done more for them than this village would have ever done without you. If I can't ask you to secure their well-being, who can I? Remembering Yoshimaru, Tsunade nodded. All right then. Wonder what Jiraiya and Orochimaru will say about this. Meanwhile, in IWA, Jiraiya was on edge about how his own little encounter with a foreign Kage was going to go. While he hoped things would go in his favor, he wasn't about to pretend there was no potential danger here. Not with Iwa's reputation regarding Konoha forces, even if that may turn out to be truly false. Which was the whole point of this visit. So far the fact that Jiraiya hadn't been attacked on sight was a good thing. When he asked for permission to see the Tsuchikage, they told him to wait outside city limits while one of Iwa's Umbu checked to see if the Tsuchikage even wanted a visitor. He had to wait a day outside before he got an answer, but for a hermit like him that was nothing. The answer he did get certainly surprised him. The next morning, the Tsuchikage came to the gates personally to see him there, accompanied by 2 guards. One was a tall hefty person that looked like part of the Akimichi clan and the second was a brunette kunoichi in attire that was easy on Jiraiya's eyes. The Toad Sannin allowed himself one brief, perverted mental moment to get it out of his system before he became purely professional about this opportunity. Tsuchikage-sama, I presume? Jiraiya greeted generally. Man, this guy really needs to retire. Was he always this short, or does he have that old person syndrome that makes them shrink to a fraction of their size? Yes, and what is so important you had to drag me away from my work and comfortable chair? Tsuchikage said, feigning irritation since he wanted to go outside and get some fresh air anyway. But he needed to maintain a tough image. Well, Tsuchikage-sama, as you may or may not know, I'm affiliated with Konoha. Jiraiya started to test for a reaction, which he didn't get. And recently I've come across some information regarding your village that absolutely must be confirmed by yourself. And why the heck should I? Because it involves the Yondaime Hokage. Jiraiya answered, again gauging the reaction. This time he got one, as the Tsuchikage widened his eyes and the 2 guards looked at the old man carefully, as if expecting orders just then. Tsuchikage then coughed and recomposed himself. What about him? Last I heard he died a little over 3 years ago. You're not gonna tell me that's changed, are you? Jiraiya shook his head. Nope. But what I need to know is your village's opinion on him. And let's just say I have a personal interest in knowing. Like what? The husky guard asked. Well, for one thing, I was his teacher. The Toad Sannin answered. There's the bait. If they really have enough anger at Minato to attack those closest to him, they should try something to me in a few moments. If they don't, it should mean Naruto's safe from them. Should we tell him? The Iwa Kunoichi asked the short old man. Tsuchikage shrugged. Why not? It's not going to change anything, is it? And the subject isn't something we really need to hide anyway. He then looked right at Jiraiya, as much as the height difference would allow for eye contact. I'd like to say you taught him well. We owed him a lot but never got the chance to repay him for his heroics here. So the Yondaime Hokage really is revered here? Jiraiya asked. Tsuchikage raised an eyebrow. Whatever made you think he wasn't? The Sandaime Hokage. There was a long pause for a bit. Care to explain? You might want to sit down for this. It could take a while. Jiraiya told him, sitting down himself to show this wasn't some trick. Neither one of the IWA made an effort to move though. Anyway, as you should already be aware, the Yondaime Hokage, in the last great ninja war, slew a great number of your forces. Yes. And? Tsuchikage asked impatiently. The official story going around Konoha, as told by the Sandaime Hokage, is that your entire village would fight to the last civilian like a bunch of crazed mindless marauders to kill Yondaime-sama if he were still alive. Or his family if any were alive irregardless of their age or involvement. All three of the present IWA Shinboi involuntarily jerked back, as if stabbed by something. Care to repeat that? Tsuchikage asked. I think you heard it right the first time. Jiraiya responded formally. The only reason I'm here is because I've recently come across several documents and peace offers from IWA to Konoha showing gratitude and concern for Yondaime-sama. Since I knew only what the Sandaime Hokage told me, I felt I needed to get an answer directly from the source. The Kunoichi gave the Tsuchikage and then the Toad Sannin confused looks. Why would he say something like that? I haven't the foggiest. But I need to know if there's any truth to it. Jiraiya replied. There might be a few people, those connected to the slain, but only a few and not the whole village. Your Hokage really did us a favor. Had he not been here at that time, we might have had a civil war and become similar to the Bloody Mist afterwards. The Husky Guard answered. Tsuchikage nodded in agreement. Indeed. We owe Minato Namikaze a great deal. The least we can do for him is not encroach on Konoha until it proves it deserves otherwise. Jiraiya sighed sadly. I'm afraid it may already be too late. At their predicted confused looks, he continued his train of thought. Yondaime-sama does have a living relative, and let's just say Konoha has been as bad to him as they claim you would be. Maybe worse. There was a bit of a pause from the IWA Shinobi. Who is he? Minato's 3-year-old son. Wait a minute. You said the Sandaime Hokage claims we'd be like monsters to him, a 3-year-old and the son of their hero? And Konoha's been just as bad in reality to the same 3-year-old all this time? The Kunoichi asked, mortified by what she was hearing. Why? Jiraiya shrugged. I don't know all the details myself. And what I do know I can't reveal any more than I've already said. If you want to hear more, contact me through the daimyo of Land of Rice Paddies later. My teammates. And I can better inform you then. Until then, if you have any contact with Konoha or the Hokage, try and pretend this discussion never took place. Tsuchikage faintly nodded. I'll keep that in mind. After all, my gut tells me I want to hear all of this little matter. Jiraiya nodded. Best they don't know about Naruto being a Jinchuriki for now. And as for everything else, I only have guesses for. Guesses that would only confuse them without them knowing of the Kyuubi's full involvement here. I have a lot to think about, so I'll part here and contact you if I need reassurance. So long Sanin-san. Tsuchikage said as he began to turn to go back to his office. Jiraiya nodded. Remember, Rice Paddy Daimyo if you need me. He then shoo-shined away. The IWA Nin walked away in silence until they were inside the Kage Tower. Once there Tsuchikage raised a sound barrier around the three of them. So what do you two think he isn't telling us? Something really important. If he's right about all of Konoha treating Namikaze-sama's child so roughly, there must be a reason. Maybe 1 or 2 people would be horrible without just cause, but the whole village? Impossible, a whole village doesn't just come together and say, let's make this kid's life hell just for the fun of it. They must have a motive. Question is, what? The Husky Guard stated. Wait, I just thought of something. The Kunoichi commented. Sanin-sama said Namikaze-sama's child was 3, right? Wasn't Konoha hit by the Kyuubi no Kitsune 3 years ago? Such an event was generally too big to be covered up and was heard all around the elemental nations. No enemies invaded Konoha afterwards because word got out little damage had been done, so the opportunity for invasion wasn't increased. Tsuchikage's eyes widened at the implication. Well, he was renowned as a sealing expert, so what you're suggesting is not impossible. IWA had its own Jinchurikis which had been created under similar circumstances, so the connection was an easy one for them to make once they actually thought about it. Let me get this straight. The husky guard said. You're suggesting that the Yondaime Hokage saved his village from the strongest bijou of legend by sealing it inside his own child, effectively killing himself, and they repay him by abusing his child and making it sound like our village would be even worse if we knew about him? You got any better explanation? Considering what Sanin-sama told us, it makes sense. The kunoichi replied. Tsuchikage groaned. We have much to think about. But for now, none of this ever happened, am I clear? His two guards nodded. Good. Later on the Tsuchikage went back into his office and wearily rested his forehead on his clasped hands. What a mess. I highly doubt this is some sort of trick, since I myself sent an offer of peace to Konoha years ago and got a positive answer back. One of their own trying to manipulate a drift between us is illogical. It sounds to me like the current Hokage is up to something, but whatever it is, it sure isn't clear. I need to keep an eye on this matter, and until I'm more aware of the Hokage's involvement, it's best I keep him uninformed like he did me. Meanwhile, things weren't going that well for Orochimaru back in Oto. He should have known something like this would have happened, but was more focused on other pressing matters. At the moment he was dealing with Oto's first prisoner. The prisoner in question was a man from the Hyuga clan branch family, evidenced by the seal on his forehead. No other identifying features were on his person though. Hitomi might have recognized him if she saw him, but Orochimaru was keeping her ignorant of this situation for now, at least until he had a better understanding of it. He already had a good idea what was going on, but needed to confirm, and since he hadn't assigned any interrogators yet, he would have to do the job here. Why did you come here? The snake Sannin asked the captive, who was chained to a chair in a small room. It was a good thing Oto already had a place to put their captives, even if they didn't expect any so soon. Piss off. The Hyuga spat. Never thought I'd hear talk like that from a Hyuga. But then again, I never expected the clan to be full of child beaters either. He then summoned a giant constrictor snake which got ready to constrict around the prisoner but didn't just yet. So tell me, why are you here? You'll never get anything out of me, you scumbag. The Hyuga said before he used one hand to make a hand sign that made his seal glow before he fell down coughing up blood. What was that? The snake asked. Orochimaru checked for a pulse, then saw the caged bird seal light up again and every orifice on the man's head started bleeding badly. He's definitely dead. Must have used a suicide jutsu to activate his own seal and avoid anything that could happen here. Didn't think Hyugas could do that to themselves. The snake left and Orochimaru used a fire jutsu to dispose of the remains. I have a feeling that the Hyuga family sent him after Hitomi-san to watch over her. Maybe to confirm her death if they indeed tried poisoning her. It did seem rather odd that when Jiraiya offered to take her to a healer they just let her go off on her own, even if they were innocent. But this also means he had to have followed Jiraiya the whole way or had some help tracking him. Something's not right here, since the Hyuga track primarily with their eyes alone and Gamabunta runs too swift for any human to keep an eye on or keep up with on foot. And what's worse, it's possible this Hyuga got a message out about where we are and who's here. And I have no idea what to do about that just now. He paused for a brief sigh. I know Jiraiya already told them Hitomi-san and her baby didn't make it, but if this is any indication of things to come, we need to get on the defensive soon. Not just for the Hyuga, but maybe Konoha too. Ah guys, good thing you're. Tsunade, what's the meaning of this? Orochimaru said as his two teammates showed up back in Oto, coincidentally at the same time. But that wasn't what surprised him. No, what surprised him was that Tsunade had left with 2 kids and came back with 5. Long story short, Kazekage-sama wants us to watch over his kids for a few months, maybe a year but no longer. Tsunade answered, trying to make it sound like it was no big deal or at worst a minor inconvenience. Naturally it didn't work. Please tell me the unsummarized version, Tsunade. Orochimaru said wearily as he rubbed his head, feeling a small headache preemptively start. Hitomi, who was standing next to Orochimaru at the time, smiled to the children present. Welcome to our village. I hope you enjoy your time here and behave like god children should. Tsunade knelt down to look at the kids first. Say, Naruto-chan, Anko-chan, why don't you introduce our guests to your other friends and make them feel welcome? Sure. Follow me, guys. Naruto eagerly said before he ran down the hall excitedly. Anko quickly followed him. Wait, Otuto. You don't even know where they are. We gotta deal with this for 6 months? Kankuro snidely questioned as he and his siblings followed Anko. Once all the kids were out of sight, Tsunade turned to Jiraiya. Jiraiya, first thing I want to say is you need to look over the young boy with red hair tonight. Check the seal on him a dozen times. If you have to, just make sure it works. Let me guess, he's Suna's Jinchuriki. Tsunade nodded, and then faced both her teammates. What we read was true, the Kazekage was being inhumane to his Jinchuriki, his own son, because he had become intimidated by Sensei's boasting. I managed to convince him there was no threat and he was relieved, and decided to treat the poor boy like a human again. But because of long-term past damage, he feared the boy couldn't just handle the new change and wanted us to look over him in an environment he knows isn't dangerous. Again, just temporarily, but this will ensure good connections with Suna. Good. One good thing to come. Jiraiya, anything on your end? Orochimaru replied. The Tsuchikage was a little more difficult in my opinion. Old guy really has a watchful eye on anyone who just shows up for any reason. But I did find out that Minato really is praised there and they're appalled that his son was a pariah back in Konoha. No guarantee on an allegiance yet, but I expect to hear from them within a week's time wanting to discuss one. I sure hope things work out. We could use the support. Hitomi commented. How much did either of you two tell about Naruto? Orochimaru asked. I said nothing other than he was alive. Jiraiya answered. Likewise. The Kazekage saw him and spoke with him once, but he shouldn't suspect anything unusual. Tsunade answered too. And as a side note, neither Naruto-chan or Gaara realizes their own situation or the other one's yet. Good. Let it stay that way for a bit. Let them both just be kids for a while, then tell them that burden. Jiraiya suggested. And I'll look over the seal first thing tonight. Just wondering how to explain it to him without saying too much. Aside from that, here's something I need to tell all of you, especially you Hitomi-san. Orochimaru started, gaining all of their interests. Not too long ago, we had an intruder. A member from the Hyuga branch family tracked Hitomi-san down with unclear but surely not beneficial motives. I didn't get much out of him, but it shows that Oto may not be as secure as we intended. Jiraiya smacked his hand with his fist. Damn it, it must have been because we came here on Bunta. Big guy leaves pretty big footprints after all, with flattened trees in them, so it probably wasn't that hard. Tsunade nodded. Good point. We'll have to find a way to cover the tracks up and soon. Any idea who it was? Hitomi asked. Orochimaru shook his head. Sorry, no name given or any identification. Hitomi sighed. I had a feeling something like this would have happened. If they really did poison me, then there's no way they'd just let me go off to see the best medic Nin Konoha knows to go get cured. Then why did they? Tsunade asked. Probably because refusing to would incriminate them or make them look dishonorable in the village's eyes. Jiraiya suggested. That's what I think too. The Hyuga have always been a vain clan, wanting the best public image. Second only to the Uchiha. So they say yes to avoid looking bad, then watch from the shadows to eliminate any problems without it being obvious they're responsible. Thus saving face and maybe gaining sympathy from the village for having suffered such a tragic loss? Tsunade summarized. I'm more concerned about what they'll do when their little errand boy doesn't return. Jiraiya added. Hitomi didn't know what to say just then. My own clan, my family, maybe even my husband, want me dead or completely under their control. All because I might have blown the cover on something that could be very dangerous in the wrong hands? It was my duty to report threats to the village, not hide them. What is going on here? Here's something you forgot, Tsunade-chan. Orochimaru added. Had things gone as they planned, it would have made Jiraiya look like he had placed Hitomi-san in a dangerous situation like an incompetent fool, and you like you're not as good a medic nin as your reputation claims. Jiraiya blinked and widened his eyes at the realization. Do you think that smear on us would have been intentional or just a side effect? Probably the latter. Why would anyone in Konoha want to deliberately defame two of its most celebrated soldiers? I don't know. This mess is too much for even me to understand right away. I can't even begin to understand why anyone there has done any of the things they've done. At least, I don't have a good answer for anything. Orochimaru answered wearily. Sounds like the will of fire is all burned out. Hitomi commented quietly. That it does. Jiraiya agreed. Then he thought of something off topic. Hey, not to be crass or anything, but with so many kids here at one time, is it possible that some people will start to think someone here's a pedophile? Everyone gave the Toad Sannin surprised looks, but Tsunade lightly grinned after a moment's thought. Well, if they do, won't they? Most likely accuse the one with the most perverted reputation? Jiraiya groaned, hit his head, and went off to guzzle down some sake while the others laughed. Meanwhile, Naruto and Enko found Hinata, Kabuto, Kurenai, Yamato, and Isaribi were busy playing in a pool outside. Kurenai was trying to show Hinata how to swim since she didn't know how yet outside the shallow end. The two boys were just floating around lazily while Isaribi swam like she had been born underwater. Hi guys. We're back. Naruto shouted as he walked up to them all. Hi Naruto-kun, Enko-chan. Who's that with you? Kurenai greeted while the others just waved. Some friends we got in Suna. They're going to be staying here for a little while. Enko answered. Temari stepped forward and put her hand on her hip. Hi, I'm Temari Sabaku. The clown is my brother Kankuro and the redhead is my brother Gaara. I'm not a clown. Kankuro countered. Your face says otherwise. The blonde Suna girl replied snidely. Enko leaned in to whisper to Kankuro. Maybe for the time being you shouldn't decorate your face with anything. But it looks cool. Then why is everyone making fun of you for it? The Suna boy slumped in defeat after that comment. Hey, you guys brought swimsuits, right? Let's swim. Naruto asked excitedly before ducking away to change into his own swimwear. Hey, where's Shizun-chan? Watching over Hanabi-chan for now. She'll be here shortly. Kurenai answered. Good thing Tsunade-sama had some stop at that shop and get some swimsuits since they don't sell those in Suna. Temari stated before going into a dressing room herself. Kankuro, Gaara, and Enko soon changed as well and hopped in the pool, starting in the shallow end. Since Enko and Temari had the most experience swimming, Temari having been able to sneak into one of the few oases around Suna from time to time, they soon ended up in the deeper end. Kurenai would have joined them but was still helping Hinata get the hang of it. Yamato and Kabuto started doing the same with Kankuro and Gaara. Naruto was just winging it but enjoying himself, and it looked like Isaribi was sticking close by him. Temari gave Anko a small nudge and whispered. "Looks like that girl has a bit of a crush on your brother." "Maybe, but the other girl with white eyes has one too, I think." "Which one do you think he likes?" Anko shrugged. "Don't know. Doesn't really matter since Jizan said he's supposed to have 9 wives when he's older. Maybe he'll have both." Temari gasped silently. 9? How is that possible? Anko shrugged again. "Dunno, but if Otuto deserves it, then it doesn't matter to me." Temari gave the blonde boy a longer long. Wonder what's so special about him?" Anko narrowed her eyes. "Don't tell me you want to be one of the 9. Temari shrugged and grinned mischievously. "Not now, but maybe I'd like to be considered an option later on. He is a good person, you gotta admit that." "Don't need to tell me that." Back in Konoha, Sarutobi was in his office dealing with a rather irate Danzo. But then again, a calm Danzo was probably a more dangerous one. "Danzo, haven't I already told you that there are no free Jinchurikis to be claimed? How many times must we go over this?" "As many times as it will take until you realize my point is valid," the old Warhawk declared. "Valid? You've been asking me, practically ordering me, the Hokage, to send out units to other villages and steal their Jinchuriki to replace the one we lost. It's not as simple as you'd like to imagine." "Rubbish. Surely there must be a village that doesn't want their demon any more than Konoha did and would be glad to have it off their hands." Sarutobi narrowed his eyes. "Even if you were right, what village would that be? No village announces to others that they have a Jinchuriki. The only reason I even heard about the one in Suna is because they asked Minato how to seal the Shikaku away and the Kazekage was naive enough to send the Hokage information that it had been successful before he realized Minato was no longer in office." Danzo wasn't swayed. "That's what we have trackers for. Don't you realize that all villages keep their Jinchurikis guarded from outside threats until they can fight back?" Sarutobi countered, ignoring the fact that Jinchuriki were only guarded to a point. "Have you so little faith in your own ninja that you feel they can't accomplish this? Looks like you're getting too old for this job." "Maybe someone," Danzo tried to say. "Danzo, you're a year older than I am. If I'm too old, so are you." The Sandaime Hokage interrupted. Danzo scowled. "Nevertheless, I still say I should round up some shinobi and have them. Danzo, like you yourself said a moment ago, the ninja are mine to control. You're not Hokage, I am. And I say it's a waste of resources to go Jinchuriki hunting. Maybe you and the rest of the council should have worked to ensure we didn't lose the one we already had. But no, it was so much more important to you to have everyone victimize him. We needed to ensure he knew his place." Danzo explained like he was justifying swatting a fly. "And that place was going to be under my rule when he would have grown to be a shinobi. But thanks to everyone else he never lived past 3. And you want to say, oops, better luck next time? I'm not even going to consider this until I see good reason to take in a foreign ninja or another bijou strikes. And if by chance one does show up anytime soon, I will hold you responsible for it and make it known to the whole village. Damn. I guess I have no choice but to send out Root Nin to find a vulnerable young Jinchuriki. I was hoping to have it be approved by Hiruzen so I wouldn't have to waste my own resources, but it can't be helped. No matter how long it takes, I will acquire that sort of weapon." Danzo bitterly thought. "Very well then. I'll leave you to your work," he said before leaving. Pompous SOB. Sarutobi thought. He's still pissed that Naidame-sama chose me over him. I've been trying to shame him for years to get him to accept it, but it seems it's still going to take a while. If Naruto was still alive and able to serve me later, I'm sure he would have been an excellent tool in doing so. Alas, what's done is done and I have to deal with the future. Gotta figure out who could take the place of Hayashi's late wife so the main branch can produce a new heir. He shouldn't mind since he married Hitomi for political reasons, only so doing it again would be nothing new. Also, I wonder if that one Hyuga was able to finish her off before she told Jiraiya or Tsunade anything they didn't need to know. He hasn't reported back yet, maybe he's a casualty. Well, as long as he got the job done, that's the important thing. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and subscribe for more content. Support the original author by clicking their profile link in the pinned comment of the first video of this series. They deserve the love. Want early access and exclusive content? Join my Patreon community, link below. Your support fuels these videos. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and I'll catch you in the next video. Stay entertained, stay safe.